For the cover of chapter 1031, Oda drew a colour spread of the notable number 2s in One Piece. The number 2 of a crew is a crucial role that not only provides great strength, but can also be a voice of reason or provide secondary leadership at times. These number 2s Oda picked out are all strong in their own right, and I figured it'd be interesting to rank them. Obviously, One Piece is still an ongoing story and things are subject to change with new information, so this ranking will be based on everything we know up until chapter 1111. But before we delve into it though, if you're new to the channel or you like content like this, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel, and as always, your support is much appreciated. Starting off with tier D, we have Katakuri and Killer. Despite being a formidable fighter that has polished his observation haki to even see the future, this is as far as Katakuri can be ranked, which is a testament to how strong the rest of the guys on this list are. Katakuri is weaker than but comparable to Whole Cake Island Snake Man Luffy, and in Act 1 of Wano, the same Luffy that surpassed Katakuri fights base Kaido and is blitzed and one-shot. Not only that, but Luffy wasn't able to damage Kaido with Boundman, which has higher attack power than Katakuri. To be fair though, Luffy wasn't calm in this fight, which likely affected his usage of Future Sight. This is later proven to be the case, as base Luffy was able to react to the same Thunder Bagua and notes to his Future Sight, with Kaido praising Luffy for not letting the same attack hit him head on twice. As for Luffy's durability, this wouldn't change due to the anger, so Katakuri still gets one shot by a base Thunder Bagua level attack. Killer on the other hand was able to blitz base Kaido, who had his guard up, and even damage him slightly with beheading claws without the use of any hacks or Ryo to bypass Kaido's durability. Killer also has Soundwave based attacks such as the Sonic Scyther, which dealt more damage than his previous attack. Killer was also shown being able to withstand multiple attacks from Big Mom without suffering any noticeable injuries, which is impressive as even tougher dinos like Queen were overwhelmed by Big Mom's raw physical power alone. Killer was also seemingly able to take Big Mom's full Gora technique head on better than even Kid did, as we see Killer standing up from the attack first, and there's these squiggle lines above Kid's head indicating that he took damage. The general portrayal of the rooftop supernova was that they were fighters worthy of Kaido's praise, whereas the likes of post-Whole Cake Luffy, who is relative to Katakuri, wouldn't be. If you want to argue that Katakuri's speed would still be relevant in the rooftop battle, which it definitely would be, to put him above Killer, that's understandable. However, personally I would consider Killer to be overall stronger anyway, especially from a raw power and durability standpoint. Moving on to tier C, and this will be the lengthiest part to cover, as we have Sabo, Shiryu, Marco and King. These four are really annoying to rank because it heavily depends on how much value is placed into feats or narrative hype and importance. For starters, Marco was capable of fighting equally with the suppressed admirals in Marineford. However, that doesn't scale him to them, as he wasn't strong enough to defeat both Queen and King at the same time, whereas an admiral is portrayed to be able to do so. Despite not being able to beat them, he had enough physical strength to hold them in place, and he was also shown to be faster than Flame on King even when he was fatigued. Marco has even clashed with the base Big Mom and even overpowered Prometheus, with Big Mom suggesting she didn't have enough soul weapons to beat him at the time. A fatigued Marco also has the power to damage tough dinos like Queen, and arguably damage King with his flame on, although I'd wait to see how the official coloured manga shows if Marco actually made King bleed or if it's just debris like some people argue. Marco's a tough person to put down for good, as his fruit allows him to regenerate from pretty much anything. However, he can't use his ability indefinitely, as it's in some way tied to his stamina. Even so, Marco actually has great stamina feats, as he was able to hold off King and Queen for longer than Luffy used Gear 4 the first time on the rooftop, and Luffy's time limit with Gear 4 is shown to be about 30 minutes. Marco would continue fighting long after this until he reaches his limit towards the end of the raid, but he would then get up again twice, the first time to protect a bandaged Zoro from King, and the second time to protect Nami from Kaido. King on the other hand was capable of overwhelming rooftop Zoro, who was strong enough to force Big Mom to warn Kaido to dodge his Dragon Blaze technique, which he didn't have to do for any of the other supernova including Luffy. King also displays power arguably greater than hybrid Kaido's Thunder Bagua in chapter 1010, and Zoro admits King's self-combusting attack would have killed him if he didn't use armament haki, but Zoro was able to survive Kaido's Thunder Bagua despite being on his last legs and immobile. There are a couple of things to consider with this, as A, Kaido is shown to hold back his haki throughout the raid, and B, despite Zoro being on his last legs, it's not impossible that he used armor and haki to defend himself. However, you can argue it'd be unlikely. There's no real way of knowing for sure with point B, but I'm just offering the alternative possibility. King is also more durable than Kaido when the flame on his back is active, but when he turns the flame off, he trades his unparalleled durability for greater speed, which was able to press Zoro. Some would say that King is definitively above Marco because it seems he beat him off screen without much help from Queen, who was dealing with Chopper and Sanji at the time. However, even if that's true, by the time it even became a 1v1, Marco was already exhausted due to fighting both King and Queen, which Perospero even highlights. Now for Sabo, the last time he had an actual big fight was back in Dressrosa against Fujitora. Sabo had just become the user of the flame fruit and he was learning how to use it on the fly. Their fight ended in a stalemate, which sounds very impressive for Sabo until you realize that Fujitora was deliberately sandbagging the entire time. Fujitora had no interest of stopping Luffy from getting to Doflamingo like Sabo thought, and was actually betting on Luffy to fix the issue the world government caused. In fact, Fujitora outright admits this to Sabo at the end of the fight and used that fight to make it look like Fujitora was being held up when he actually wasn't. Even though Dressrosa Sabo doesn't scale anywhere near to Fujitora, we see him training with the flame fruit after the arc, so we know he's gotten stronger since then. The problem is, we don't actually know how much stronger he's become since then, and the Reverie didn't give us any answers either. Sabo does nothing impressive during the Reverie except get beat up pretty bad by what appears to be a casual attack from Imu. Mind you that this attack didn't even one-shot kill King Cobra, who is a dying old man, and it left Sabo in a terrible state. Not only that, but King Cobra was even able to stand back up to protect Sabo as he escaped, which is hilariously ridiculous. Now this can just be ignored as plot-induced stupidity, but it's definitely not a good look for a character that's running on limited feats as it is. All Sabo got from the Reverie was the title of Flame Emperor due to being perceived as the one who killed King Cobra and declaring war on the Celestial Dragons. Lastly for Shiryu, all we know is that he was once on par with Magellan, who was by far the strongest in Impel Down. He had the likes of Crocodile, Jinbei and Ivankov all running away from him as he was deemed too strong to deal with. Even when Blackbeard, who had defeated Ace, infiltrated the prison, Magellan was able to easily stop him, although you could argue Blackbeard was being careless as usual. Either way, Shiryu has become stronger since then and is now the user of the Clear fruit, and he makes use of this ability when Garp storms Hachinosu. Shiryu was capable of injuring the Iron Garp enough that he had lasting injuries that clearly affected him as the battle with Kuzan went on. However, Shiryu was only able to land this attack due to Garp using himself as a human shield to protect Kobe, so under normal circumstances, the attack might not have been as effective. Garp would then grab Shiryu by his coat and slam him to the ground, which damages him, and that's the end of that altercation. As for how these four rank, it's pretty convoluted to say the least. Sabo and Marco both fought against suppressed admirals, however in the case of Sabo, Fujitora wasn't actually trying to defeat him, whereas in the case of Marco, we see an instance where he's holding off Akainu to help Luffy and Jinbei escape, and Akainu does want to get past them in order to take out Luffy. This would make Marco's showings against the admirals in Marineford more impressive, however we know that Sabo currently is stronger than he was in Dressrosa by an unquantifiable amount. It could be the case that Sabo's development with his Devil Fruit could have pushed him over the Marco edge, but there's no way of knowing at the moment. When we add King to the mix, Sabo hasn't shown any attack power feats that would suggest he's a threat to Flame on King, however Marco arguably does, depending on whether or not you interpret this panel to be blood or not. The reason why this is important is because Zoro showed that the win condition against King is to force him out of his defense mode because it's far easier to damage him that way. Zoro was able to beat King by having raw power that threatened his nigh invincible durability, which made him rely on his speed mode and take a more offensive approach. Some of King's strongest techniques are through his speed mode as well, so it's not as if he'll go an entire fight without dropping his defenses. Marco is the only one with the feats that might be able to be a threat to King's Flame on durability to some extent. He's also a good bit faster than Flame on King, as shown when King couldn't react to Marco's Bluebird or his diving knee attack. In that case, King would be forced to enter his speed mode at times, which Marco could take advantage of. Their fight would likely turn into a battle of attrition, and it could go either way with arguments for both. However, I'll give the edge to King, as wearing down Marco's regen limit might be a bit easier than wearing down King's Lunarian durability. Then there's Shiryu, who is clearly a future opponent for Zoro, and Zoro's next major opponents are typically stronger than the last, which means that Shiryu would be stronger than King. Not only that, but Zoro is sometimes forced to grow stronger mid-battle in order to win against major arc opponents such as Dazbones and King. This would suggest that Shiryu would be even stronger than an Egghead Zoro, but that's only assuming he'll be a similar type of opponent as Dazbones or King. However, can we even concretely say that the version of Shiryu as of this recording will be the same strength as the one that will inevitably fight Zoro? Is it possible that Shiryu is still developing and is yet to be stronger than King at the moment? I ask that because not only does Shiryu not have the feats to suggest he'd be a threat to King's Flame on durability, but some of the Titanic captains are newly awakened Delphi users that are still developing. Shiryu has only had his clear fruits for about a month, so it's fair to assume that he has yet to fully master and individualize the ability to his fighting style. Even Blackbeard himself likely hasn't hit his peak strength yet, as he's yet to face off against Shanks, so if he's still developing, then it's unlikely that Shiryu would be the only Blackbeard pirate that has already reached their peak. Even so, Shiryu's invisibility can still give him a big advantage over everyone on this tier, as we're yet to really know how Observation Haki interacts with this power. We also don't know how Shiryu would use invisibility in character, which goes to my earlier point about him still developing his ability and the fact we just haven't seen him fight enough to know his fighting style. The only reference point we have for how this power was used was Absalom, and he didn't constantly remain invisible versus Sanji, and sometimes he left his invisible state after getting hit by a heavy attack. This might also remain true for Shiryu, as he became visible after Garp slammed him to the ground, but like I said, we just don't know enough about Shiryu's fighting style to say how he would use his invisibility. Hopefully you can now understand why these four are very annoying to rank, especially for someone in my position that has to upset the least amount of people possible. That being said, the ranking strictly based on their on-panel scaling and feats would be King being the strongest, then Marco, Shiryu, and lastly Sabo. King is pretty much a matchup problem for everyone on this tier, with only Marco being potentially able to combat his durability. Shiryu and Marco on the other hand probably scale close to each other, considering he should be a good amount above Ace like Yami Blackbeard was, but Marco's regen factor gives him the edge for me at the moment. Marco would also be able to deal with Shiryu's invisibility not only through aerial attacks, but he could do something where he allows Shiryu to stab him to lock him in place, so Marco could fire a Bluebird at point blank range, which would work well given his regen factor. Sanji pulled off a similar strategy when he grabbed invisible Absalom so he could lock him in to land his attack, so it wouldn't be something inconceivable for Marco. Sabo's at the bottom of this tier for me, as his feat vs Fujitora could have literally been replicated by anyone else on this tier, given Fujitora's discretion. As a reminder, Fujitora was deliberately fighting Sabo to a stalemate so that he doesn't involve himself in Luffy's battle against Doflamingo. Sabo even notices that Fujitora was fighting strangely and calls him out for playing dumb, and he's also the only one getting damaged in the fight. So if Fujitora had the same motivations versus Sabo for the rest of this tier, it'd play out in a similar way. Other than that, Sabo's only feat is beating a version of Jesus Burgess before he gained his strong fruit, which isn't that impressive, and yeah. Anyways. Now, if we factor in narrative hype, this becomes very subjective and dependent on one's individual headcanon for these characters. Sabo and Shiryu will clearly be more important characters than Marco and King in the final saga, as Sabo has already become someone who rivals Dragon's influence on the world, and Shiryu is the number 2 to Blackbeard, who is a potential final antagonist of the story. Personally, I do think Shiryu and Sabo will look stronger than Marco and King by a considerable amount later in the story, so in that case, I'll leave that up for you guys to decide, and you guys can let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Finally, with that behemoth of a section out of the way, we can move on to tier B, which will only be Roronoa Zoro. I figured placing him in his own tier makes the most sense, considering he clearly has a much better feats than tier C, but not enough feats and portrayal that confidently puts him in tier A without a shadow of a doubt. Now for Zoro, he's legitimately among the handful of the strongest fighters in the world. After coating himself with Conqueror's Haki consciously, he was able to easily overwhelm King and not be touched a single time. Even before learning Conqueror's coating, he was so strong that Big Mom had to warn Kaido to dodge his Dragon Blaze, which he didn't need to do for any of the other supernova at the time. Zoro's lower tier techniques such as the Ultra Tiger Hunt infused with Conquerors greatly surpassed his higher tier techniques that were only coated in Armament Haki. An example of this would be Zoro's Ryo Shishi Sonson, which wasn't able to damage King. However, Zoro was considered a threat to King's flame on durability after getting hit with the Conqueror's coated Tiger Hunt. We know this because after that attack, King changed the way he fought from trying to tank everything with his flame on durability to dodging and blocking Zoro's attacks, which Zoro even calls him out on. Zoro was even able to clash with a suppressed Kaido using Ashura, then proceed to blitz and leave a new scar on his chest, all the while being in a severely weakened state. Zoro's ridiculous power is shown on display yet again in Egghead when he defeats Awakened Lucci after landing a single 3-sword style technique. Whether or not you think the Huvava Spot Hunt technique is coated in only armament or Conqueror's Haki as well is hard to tell, but either way this technique dealt more damage than all 3 of Gear 5 Luffy's non-Conqueror's coated attacks done to Lucci. In fact, Lucci was able to come back from Luffy's beatdown relatively quickly, whereas we're yet to see how long it will take for Lucci to recover from Zoro's attack. Despite Zoro having great raw power with King of Hell, the downside is that Enma drains Zoro's Haki very quickly when he goes all out with his Haki, so he wasn't able to stay in this mode for very long against King. As of this recording, Zoro has yet to wield Enma the same way Oden could, which means he's still got a lot of room to grow. Now we're in the undisputed top tier territory, so for tier A, we have Old Rayleigh and Ben Beckman. Some of you may think Zoro belongs in this tier, however unlike Zoro, Rayleigh and Beckman have more concrete portrayal and feats that would put them close to if not on the tier of some of the Yonko and Admirals. Old Rayleigh was capable of fighting equally against Kizaru in the time they fought, however due to his old age, he was lacking in the stamina that he had in his younger days. Kizaru even says in order to capture Rayleigh, the Marines would have to make certain preparations, meaning it'd be a tough endeavour for an Admiral under normal circumstances. A mentally nerfed Kizaru was capable of swapping hands against a non-Conqueror's coated Gear 5, which is not only Luffy's strongest form, but also his fastest. Rayleigh was also strong enough to force Blackbeard into cooperating as he mediated the situation between Blackbeard and Boa Hancock. Even though Rayleigh admits he wouldn't be able to beat Blackbeard, the fact that Blackbeard pulls back goes to show that even facing a retired Rayleigh is still quite the challenge. For Ben Beckman, he is the vice captain of the Red Hair Pirates and is stated in his Viva Card entry that his existence or presence rivals that of Shanks. Although Kizaru continued his attack despite Beckman's threat, it was stated in Beckman's Viva Card entry that Kizaru was aware of the danger of Beckman and that he was able to momentarily keep Kizaru in place. Even though Beckman has limited feats, all this portrays him as a man that's at least close to the level of the Admirals and the Yonko. Although Rayleigh definitely has better feats, Beckman's portrayal at least matches these feats, and considering he doesn't have the disadvantage of old age stamina, he would more than likely get the win in a fight. Lastly, for the S tier, it is the strongest right hand man in the series, and that is Silver's Rayleigh in his prime. Prime Rayleigh is capable of everything he did in his old age and more. He suggests against Kizaru that had he been younger, he would have fended off Kizaru and helped the Straw Hats at the same time who were dealing with the Pacifista. Kizaru doesn't even deny this and only says that what Rayleigh is suggesting makes him look bad. Prime Rayleigh is supposed to be a later series benchmark for Zoro to pass as well, so it's only right that he'd be at the top of this list. Anyways, that's my ranking for the major number 2s in the series so far, so if you enjoyed, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. I've been the one and only Zage, and until next time. Oh, and Beppo Solos.